Good day everyone, I'm Dan. Welcome to my channel, Pretty Average Astro. In this video, I'm going to be doing something that I never thought I'd actually be confident enough to even attempt, and that's a Pixinsight tutorial. And this is by no means a definitive guide. My skills are quite basic and I've just fumbled through it over the last few months or so. So for the hardcore Pixinsight enthusiasts, please go easy on me. Pixinsight, when you dive into it, you'll find it can become very complex very quickly. So I just want to reiterate that my understanding is very basic. And the target that I've chosen for this tutorial is IC2944, otherwise known as the Running Chicken Nebula. So we'll go through the editing process from start to finish, and the final result I plan to use as my final image, which I'll post on my Instagram page. So first things first, let's capture some data, which I haven't already gotten last week, and I'm not filming this part to make my video look cooler with some B-roll. So in between making this part of the video, I ended up catching a respiratory virus. So I've been feeling pretty average. Lately for the last week. So apologies if I cough a bit, but I'll try and cut that out. So here we are in Pixinsight. What I've done is I've split it up into 3 workspaces. Down the bottom here, we've got these boxes. So these first set of tools are for pre-stretching. Second workspace is for stretching. And third workspace is the finessing tools. So first things first, we want to load and stack our frames. So we'll go into Script, Batch Processing, Weighted Batch Processing. So here up the top, you'll see we've got these tabs. Each tab that you click on, you're able to change the parameters here in the middle, but I don't touch them at all. I leave them all pretty much stock standard, except for calibration and post-calibration. I do change a few things. But to load your frames, you'll come down the bottom here, the Directory and Files tab. That's more of an automatic way to load your frames, or you can do it manually by clicking down on these relevant tabs. And that's what I use. But because we're not using calibration, we're going to go straight to lights. So once they're all loaded, you'll see here we've got 87 300-second frames or 5-minute frames, and we put them through Blink or the ASIF Fits Viewer to check them out before we go to stack them. And again, I don't touch those parameters. So we go into calibration. What I do here is I click on my light frames and I change the output pedestal setting to automatic. Because I'm using a narrowband filter with a one-shot color camera, pixels can be so dark that they register as 0 or negative in Pixinsight. And what happens is when you calibrate that with a dark frame, the dark frame will actually delete those pixels because it thinks that there's nothing there. So what the pedestal setting, it pretty much automatically boosts those numbers so the dark frame doesn't delete those pixels. And in post-calibration, because I dither every frame, we're able to drizzle. So I just hit enable here, and that's going to give us a bit more resolution when we stack everything. And then the only thing left to do is change your output folder or choose your output folder. You click run, and then you'll get a little message bank here telling you if there's any issues. And I have a bunch, obviously, because it's telling me I haven't got any calibration frames. That's fine. And down here, you'll see how much space you're going to need to run it. And then you'll pretty much just click continue. But we've already done that. So we'll close that down and we'll open up our stacked image. So at the end of that stack, you'll get these 4 folders. Click on the master, and that's where your stack frames are going to be. So you'll have a few. So we want the one that we drizzled and auto cropped, because that's what we picked in the stack. You don't have to auto crop. You can pick just the drizzle and then crop yourself, but I've found the auto crop to be really good. We'll load up 2 files, one gray and one color. You can delete the gray. All right, so step 1, screen transfer function, otherwise known as STF. So what this does, it gives you a fake or a preview stretch without actually physically changing the parameters of the photo. And the reason that's good is all these tools here in the pre-stretch, you want to use these in the linear state, so in a non-stretch state of the photo. And the reason that you need to stretch it is you need to see how these are affecting the photo. Otherwise, you're just going to have this dark image. So if we click on this little nuke button, boom, there you go. You've got a stretch image. It is a little green, but that's fine. That's what these tools are for. So second step is your dynamic crop. Because we've auto cropped, we don't have to do this, but I'll show you how this works anyway. It's a very simple cropping tool, so you can just change the edges, you can move it around until you find what you want. And then you just simply hit the green tick yes, and boom, there's your cropped image. But we'll just undo that because we'll just use the auto crop image, and that's dynamic crop. So if you do use auto crop, then that's one less step that you have to use. Now, third step is background extraction. So we've got automatic and dynamic. So dynamic is obviously a bit more manual. I always use automatic first, see how it looks. If it looks good and I can't really notice anything bad, I'll just use that. That's fine. It usually works quite well for me. So we'll try that first. So again, I leave all the settings the same, but you do have to choose the target correction. So I'll use subtraction, and you can choose to normalize. You can choose discard the background model. The background model, it shows you what it's actually taking or extracted from the image. Sometimes that can be helpful. And the bottom box is you can replace your current image or you can have a new image created. So I'm happy just to keep the current image, and we'll just go execute. It'll do its thing. Here is the extracted data. Look at all that green that it's taken off. That's great. And then you'll just have to do another auto stretch. As you can see, that's pretty good. But if you look at the edges, there seems to be some gradients and artifacts still, and I'm not sure whether that's light pollution or nebula. So we'll undo that, re-stretch it, and we'll give dynamic background extraction a go. So once we open that, the way I do it is in Visible Dark's YouTube video. He did a really good explanation of dynamic background extraction, and I found it really helpful, and I pretty much haven't changed my process. It's really simple. You just click on part of the image and we change the radius to about 90 to make a nice square. And then I pretty much just click around the outside, try not to get the main parts of the nebula, but if I get the little bits, that's fine. Obviously having stars in there is fine, doesn't seem to affect it much. Once I'm happy with all my boxes, I do the same thing as automatic background extraction. I'll change it to subtraction. I'm happy I don't need to see the background model, and I want to change my current image. I don't want to create a new one. And then we just hit the green tick and bam, and auto stretch again. That actually looks a lot better. So I'll just close this for now. As you can see, that corner gradient that was really strong is gone. It actually looks really good, so I'm happy with dynamic background extraction. So step number 4 is spectrophotometric color calibration. So what this does, it uses a massive database to calibrate your image. So using plate solving, it knows exactly where your image is, and it uses that against the Gaia database that we have here, and it pretty much color calibrates your image to what it should be based on all that scientific data. Now, there's a lot of YouTube videos that show you how to download this database and where to put the folders and stuff, so I won't touch on that too much. Once you do have them loaded, then again, it's just a one button press, or you can drag and drop. Awesome, and it gives you this magical graph that I have no idea what I'm looking at. I know other people do, but I definitely don't. I'll close that, and if you don't want that graph to pop up, you can just untick generate graphs. And look how well that's calibrated the image. It looks really good. And I used to do background neutralization, and I just don't do that anymore because I find with the background extraction, there's no need for it. It does a really good job. So step number 5 is BlurXterminator. So this is obviously optional, and it's a paid plugin, and the only settings I play with is the PSF diameter and the sharpen non-stellar. What the PSF is pretty much an average star size for your image. You can let BlurXterminator do it automatically, but I find you do get much better results doing it yourself. And to find out the PSF, you go to Scripts, Render, PSF image, and again, one button, just click evaluate, and let it do its thing. And cool, so that's completed, and the numbers that you want to focus on are these X and Y's. So we've got 2.06 and 2.0, and you pretty much just take the average of that. So we'll go 2.03, close that, and then in here, if you had automatic, it blanks it out, but we want to uncheck that and put in our 2.03, which I have already. And with the options, we want to do correct first, and what that's going to do is it's going to correct the stars, do star reduction and stuff before actually sharpening the nebula and other parts of the image. And just like before, drag and drop. Cool, that's done. And the first thing to pay attention to is the star brightness. So if we go bright, not so bright. Zoom in here, bright, not so bright. And it just makes them a little bit more cleaner as well. So if we go up to the corner here, they look really good. They're a bit blurry. And then add the BlurXterminator. Just really cleans it up nicely around the edges. Now this sharpen on stellar, so this is pretty much the amount of sharpening it's going to provide the image. And what I've actually found is I usually wouldn't max any kind of function out, but I've actually found putting it up to 1, especially with this image, I find it sharpens it really well without overdoing it. What I'll do, I'll duplicate the image. So we'll have one that's had the 0.2 amount of sharpening, and we'll do one with the 100% sharpening. Alright, so that's done. I'll make these the same size. So we'll zoom in on one of the main parts of the nebula. As you can see on the left, it is just a bit more cleaner and a little bit more sharper. And the great thing is that this image is still linear, so we still haven't actually stretched this data. Doing this after you stretch the data, that's where you sort of risk overblowing and overexposing stuff. But I feel this is a really good start. So these little contrasty parts of the nebula I still think look fine at 100%. I'm still really happy with it. But if we zoom in on the center of the core, this is where you can really see those subtle bits of detail that are coming out in the 100%, where it's still a bit blurry. Some parts of that nebula can't even see yet. So I really think bumping up that sharpness on the BlurXterminator has done a great job. I'm really happy with that. So we'll get rid of that one. And from here, we're ready to move on to workspace number 2 to actually stretch the image. And how good does that look already? Really, it's looking awesome. So we'll send that to the next page. So there's 2 ways I do an initial stretch on my image. I'll either do it manually or automatically through a script. What I have been doing lately is I'll duplicate the image and do a stretch on both, and then try to compare them with a fine-tooth comb and use up a whole bunch of time that I don't need to. But what I've found is pretty much the script seems to provide the best result, and it's a one-click automatic. But to do the manual, you'll open up your STF Stretch, do the nuke, and then you open the histogram, and then you drag your STF settings down to the bottom of the histogram, and then drag the histogram to your image. And it will go white because it's now got those changes and it's still showing a preview of the STF, so it's like a double stretch. So you just turn that off, and there you go. There's your stretched image. So we'll check out the auto stretch now. So we'll turn this off, and we go into scripts, and you go into this easy processing suite that was created by none other than a man wizard. It would have to be. So you can download this. It's like a Pixinsight plugin. So you go down to easy soft stretch, and it gives you a nice little preview here. It's got settings that you can change, but I don't. And again, one click button, and look how good that is. Might not look too differently, but I always find that gives a lot more depth to the color on the first stretch, and I just generally seem to like that more, and it's so much quicker. So from here, I conduct my star removal. So we've got StarNet 2 here, and we want to create that star mask. Otherwise, it will just delete the stars from your image. So you want to make sure that you have that checked. And because we've now stretched the data, it's not linear. So we'll just drag and drop that onto the image. And you can also obviously use Xterminator. I don't have that because I need to sell more of my belongings to fund that, which I can't justify at the moment. But StarNet 2 is working pretty well for me at the moment. So almost done. Bam. Close that. Here's your star mask, which we'll come back to that later. And look at your starless image. Look how good that looks. And we literally haven't done anything to it. Everything's been pretty much automatic. That is so cool. So my next step is usually HDR Multiscale Multiscale Transform, and this is really great for galaxy cores, nebula cores like Orion. I find it really helps with any sort of image that's got any risk of being overexposed. And I do fiddle with these settings a little bit when I do it. So if it looks a bit funny or I think it can look a bit better, I will try these other options here, and I'll also adjust the number of layers. So the higher the number, the more of the effect it will have. And again, drag and drop that sucker, and boom, you can kind of see what it's done to the core already. So if we zoom in, you can see that the core, it's got almost like a smoky kind of look. There looks to be sort of finer detail in that nebulosity. And the great thing is, because we've kind of underexposed that part of the image, we can now brighten up the darker parts of the nebula, and we're not at risk as much of blowing out that core really quickly. So if we just take another look, it's not really doing anything drastic to that part of the core, so I'm pretty happy with that. So if we want to, we can lower that adjustment layer. Still pretty similar, still doing a really good job of bringing that detail back, but I think I'm happy with the 6 layers, so we'll keep that. Cool, now the fun begins. So this is where I choose my color scheme. So I either choose the native colors that you get straight from the camera and filter, or I can choose these normalization tools that were built by Blanshan, and they are really cool. So you've got the Who palette and the Show palette, and these are as easy as drag and drop, and changes your image to that palette, and it's really cool. So you get that golden blue. You just have to be a little bit careful with how it affects your image. So you can see here that part of the core is sort of blown out, so we just have to adjust a few things if I was going to do that. And then you've got the Show palette, so sulfur, hydrogen and oxygen, and it gives you that really nice red, sort of teal and cyan colors. Yeah, they're just really handy if that's a color scheme that you want to go for. But I'm just going to use the colors straight from the camera, and honestly, look how good that looks. Like, we can just stop here if you want. It's awesome, but we'll send this to Workplace 3. So the first tool that we have here is Curves Transformation, and this is the main tool that I use for pretty much all my fine adjustments. And the way it works is you won't see the changes in real time. You'll only see them once you hit execute or do the drag and drop method. So what I'll usually do is I'll click on this preview button, and here you'll be able to see everything in real time without actually physically changing the parameters of the photo. So here, if we just click on RGB, adjust the curves, this is pretty much how it works. If we just click the reset button, we can choose individual red channels, which actually might be handy for this image. So we can start to add a bit of red into the darker areas of the image. We can take it out of the core a little bit by removing it from the highlight, so it's not as bad. Yeah, so it's really handy. We've also got luminance, so you can just adjust the luminance of the image. Also got hue, so just changing the hue factor, and you've got saturation. And I find the saturation works really well, even better than the actual dedicated saturation tool. So I use this quite often. But what's really going to help is the use of masks. Being able to change only certain parts of the photo are going to take your pictures to the next level. So to make a mask ourselves, we want to use this range selection tool. And the way we use this, we create a preview and then adjust the limit to what we actually want to mask. So say we just want to mask off this area, we can then use the fuzziness and the smoothness. Otherwise, you'll get a really sharp gradient. So once we're happy, we'll just click execute. It'll create that mask. And what I usually do to make things easier, I'll just change my main photo to A. That allows me to then just drag and drop the mask. As you can see there, it's masked off just this part of the photo. And then we can come into curves, put in our preview, and then you can see it's only adjusting the inside of the nebula. And on the other hand, if we wanted to do the outside, we can just then invert the mask. Then you can see we're just adjusting the outside without affecting the inside. And this is what makes this tool really useful. So range selection will mask off all the channels in the image. And this is where color masks come in. And these were created by, again, the legend, Blanshan. And if I bring up Luko Matico's YouTube page, he gave an awesome tutorial on where to get these and how to use them. Luke's got some really great tutorials that I really recommend that you go to his channel and watch. He's an absolute legend. So they're pretty self-explanatory. They're going to mask off individual colors and allow you to just adjust them. If we start off with red, because our image is red, that's going to very quickly create an awesome mask. And it even comes with automatic mask blur to get rid of that gradient. Once we're happy, we'll drag that onto the image, click the preview button to bring up our image. And what I'll start to play with first is the saturation. And what I want to do is start on the outside, and to fine tune it a bit, I'll zoom in on this area here just to make sure I'm not going to lose any detail or oversaturate any image. So I'll just start to play with it a little bit, just doing very fine adjustments. You can see how quickly it can kind of blow out, and that's not looking too bad. So I'll zoom out and see how that looks. I can drag in so I'm not oversaturating the core too much, but I'm pretty happy there. So I'll go to luminance, maybe brighten these darker areas a little bit, see how that looks. Yep, that's looking pretty good. I'll go to my red channel, start to adjust things here, and just pretty much see what this is looking like. And I'll zoom in again just to make sure I'm not overblowing or losing data. Just doing tiny little adjustments here. That's looking pretty good to me. It looked awesome to start off with, so I'm hoping that's a bit better. So we'll go apply. And what I was worried about initially is when I have all these different lines for either saturation, RGB, I was worried that because the lines are so close that I could accidentally click the wrong one. But the way this works, you'll only affect the line that you've got highlighted. So at the moment we've got saturation, so that's the only line that you can affect. And if you wanted to reset that line, you can just press the red X, or if you want to reset everything, it's that bottom right hand corner. So pretty happy there. So we'll close down this preview, and before, after, before, after. Nice little color boost. We're not overdoing it, and it looks bloody awesome. So from here we can close curves transformation, and this is pretty much our starless image. As easy as that. And what I'll do from here, I'll make a duplicate, and so we'll keep one as a starless, and the other one we're going to add the stars back in. So I'll change this identifier to B. You'll see why I'll do that in a minute. And the last step we have is noise exterminator. So the default values for detail normally 0.15, but I put it up to 0.2 just to keep a bit more detail. So we'll click apply, let it do its thing. It's really quick. Bam, done already. And if we have a look at our image and we zoom into this corner here, before, you see that noise start to come in, after, exterminated. How good is that? We zoom around a bit more, go to the core, before, after, before, after. You can actually see we're losing a little bit of detail in that core here. So I might bump the detail back up, run that again and see what it looks like. That wasn't great because you can see how much that affected this part of the nebula. That contrast really got boosted and overexposed. So I don't think that's the option that we want to take. So we'll put that down maybe to 0.15. Boom, man, that's quick. So what we might have to do, another before and after, yeah, we're definitely losing really fine detail, which you're only really going to see when you're this zoomed in. But what I might actually do is run BlurXterminator again, but instead of doing the 100%, we'll bring it down to 0.2 again. And we don't need to correct the stars because there are none. So we'll let that run, and that's done. And I think that's given us what we wanted. If we go before, after, before, just looking at some of that core, it's bringing it back, which is good, and it's not degrading the picture by any means, I don't think. So that's a good way around that. So I'm happy that's all we want to do with that starless image. So from here we'll go save as and export that as a TIFF, and we'll just call that starless. Go save. And I always change this to 16-bit because it's a bit more compatible with third-party apps that I'll use to sort of clean up any little star halos or leftover stars that StarNet didn't get rid of. And warning, insufficient data storage. Really? I'll empty my bin. I'll try to save that again. And oh no, there it is. Liar. Right, cancel. Okay, so for the stars image, we want to reintegrate the stars into this image. So if we go back to the previous workspace, we'll send the star mask that we have over here. And I'm really happy with those stars from the easy soft stretch that we did already. So we'll change that ID to C. And the final step here is pixel math. So this equation, I definitely did not write that. That's from one of the color masks. So if we just delete that and do a very complex code of A plus C, and we want to create a new image, execute. I keep on saying execute, but it's apply. Hope that's not annoying.
All right, and bam, there we go. The star image looks amazing. So we'll do our noise exterminator, drag and drop, because we've got the settings that we already wanted. So noise exterminator has been done before, after. So it's really still keeping that detail. It's not really affecting the stars. It's even taking little mini halos out, but everything looks grand. So I'm happy with that. I'll just zoom in again to the detail, see what we lost. Maybe very, very fine, but with the start image, I'm not too worried about it. So I'm happy with that, but for shits and gigs, let's go BlurXterminator, 0.2, let him have it. Boom. Beautiful. Did it overblow anything here? No. It just kind of brought some stuff back. Over here, before, after. I'm pretty happy with that. Before, after. Yeah. Brings back that detail. So that's nice to know. And one last one that I forgot as well is a script called Dark Structure Enhance. And what it's going to do pretty much is enhance the dark structures. And again, you can adjust it little bit by little bit. Okay, so I'm pretty actually happy with that. If we zoom in here, let's go before and after. Subtle. I think I actually adjusted it to a low setting from my previous image when I did the Dragons of Ara, and I'm happy with that effect. It isn't overblowing anything too much. That's a nice little adjustment. So I'll do that again for this one. We'll just note if the stars affect it doing this, but it's super quick. Done. Zoom in. Really nice. It's probably even better with this starred version because it's a bit brighter. Makes those little bits just a little bit darker, a little bit more contrast, and I'm really happy with that. So I'll save this image as stars, 16-bit. Cool. Now the stars pretty much don't need to touch it. What I will do though, bring up the starless, open with Affinity Photo. So what I want to do with Affinity Photo is pretty much get rid of everything that StarNet didn't, and that's pretty easy. I'll just use my in-painting brush tool, and sometimes it's better to have it a little bit bigger than the star. Click, gone. Gone. Happy with that. That's obviously where that mega star was, but I'm not going to touch that. And then what we can do is, if you look up James Ritson on YouTube, he's pretty much an Affinity professional, and he's made a bunch of plug-in his own macro tools, which kind of really help a lot when you're doing just final little stuff. So for example, reduce background luminosity too much. Then what you can do is you can turn the opacity down. So there's lots of little ones. Final tone lift, against red signal. Golden boost is normally quite good on some, but the good thing is you can always turn down the opacity with everything. It's really, really helpful. Deep sky luminosity, and you can just use as needed. So if you didn't have Pixinsight, Affinity's photo is great. It's got its own stacking algorithm as well. So you can stack all your stuff, you can do everything in Affinity Photo, it's great. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Probably just going to keep that photo because we could spend the next 10 hours adjusting whatever. So I'll save that. And boom, that's it. There you go. So your pretty average guide to Pixinsight.
So I've been using a third-party app, and I've just realized that it stopped recording at about 40 seconds into doing that whole Pixinsight tutorial. I was meant to have like a little picture-in-picture of me doing reactions and stuff, but I'm probably not going to sit through that for another hour, but hopefully that doesn't affect anything. So there you go. There's our star and starless image really happy. They look awesome. And as you can see in like the first couple of minutes of Pixinsight, we pretty much had an image ready to go, which looked amazing. And the next kind of probably 40 minutes was fiddling around, just getting maybe an extra 15%, like just putting the real spice on it. Yeah, so if you've got the time and you enjoy it, you're doing all the fiddly stuff is the fun part of doing the editing. So if you've got the time and you enjoy it, it's really fun to do. And then on the other side, if you don't have enough time to do it, or you're just pumping out so many images, you don't have time to edit them all, you can get a really quick photo, which looks pretty professional in a couple of minutes. All you got to do, the hard work is in really getting that data, and Pixinsight makes all your hard work pay off pretty much. But shout out to the more Pixinsight enthusiasts like Adam Block, Visible Dark, Luko Matico, and Bill Blanshan, who make all this incredible stuff for amateurs like us and just allows us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do ourselves, or it would take a considerable number of years to get to this kind of level. So I'm very grateful to them, and I've learned a lot. And this is pretty much just a consolidation of all those methods and how I've structured it, and that's just my routine. So I hope that it helps. I hope that it might be useful to you if it makes sense. But if you've got any tips for me to make things easier, all those little 1% tips really help. And if you feel that I've missed something, or you'd like me to go into more detail, please let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to expand more on certain things, or if you just want to say good day. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Glad I survived till the end of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But cheers, see you later.